James, I mean, obviously this is your first time having to go through this as the man in charge. In terms of the challenges, what did you sort of see? You know, how challenging was it to sort of get down to 53?
There were some pretty deep and thoughtful conversations over the course of the off-season, training camp, and then the lead up to ultimately the conversations that we had to have with players that led to this, and they carried a lot of weight. They weren't conversations in the lead up that were taken lightly. They weren't conversations that in the moment of informing players of our decision that were light. They came with some weight, and we certainly value transparency and being thoughtful in not only the decisions but also how that's relayed to each and every player, knowing that they put in a ton of effort and energy into giving their best to this organization, to their teammates, to the coaching staff who is attempting to get the best version out of themselves. I know that for the first time, actually being the person to have to walk through that with guys, it was certainly eye-opening in a way that I just didn't have the experience to point back to. So certainly some lessons that I can be able to apply moving forward to continue to level up in that space that I look forward to doing when that time comes again. But very much appreciate anybody who stepped into this building and participated over the course of the last few weeks in training camp to give ourselves a really good position here moving into the regular season, where we feel like we're becoming the best version of the 2025 Jaguars at the right time. And I think that the physicality is something I want to point to, right? Because it's what we talked about in the offseason before our players and coaches ever got on the grass. And the mental portion of that, the toughness of both physical and mental elements is something that shined bright, I think, throughout the preseason in a couple different ways. And I point to the moment, just like we saw in preseason game 3, obviously playing some of the reserves, some of the backups against Miami's top tier crew, when our offense had 2 negative plays to start the game and then converted the third down for a first down. That bounce back is an inspiring moment at the end of a preseason, even when it's not your starters or primary contributors. But I think the fact that bled through in a real way in the performance aspect is something that I think shines a light on really what we're trying to do, and that involved a lot of guys that we had conversations with this week, and certainly appreciate all that they had done in order to bring that to life.
As much as you can share your evaluation of the landscape the last 48 hours or so that led to A, the trade for Tim this morning, and B, did you make any claims on the waiver wire?
Oh man, I'm sure it would have been fun for our fan base to see some claims come through. Obviously a little different than the draft. You don't have the opportunity to move up in the claiming order, but nonetheless, we're really happy with the way that the 53-man roster currently stands. Really excited about the addition of Tim Patrick. He is somebody that from afar, both Liam, myself, the coaching staff, the scouting staff has really appreciated his game. We talk about the idea of being mentally and physically tough, like I just pointed to, and I use the phrase intangibly rich a lot. I think anybody that does their homework on Tim Patrick understands that he's never had an easy path. He's always had to overcome obstacles. And the only thing that he communicated to us after this decision was made, that he's ready to earn every job that lies in front. And when he's got that hunger that he can provide, obviously from a veteran presence, to a room who definitely has, up until Diami, a lot of youth, right? A lot of inexperience in comparison. And the idea of building out a basketball team with not only the wide receiver room, but multiple position groups, that can be very helpful, right? Not the same exact genre across the group. That can be something that when talk with Liam, being able to artfully design plays to tap into those skill sets is something that he gets creative juices from. And so that was something that was really excited about the addition of Tim, knowing that he brings something that we don't currently have in the space.
And with Reed and Strigo, 2 rookies, when did they start really taking steps forward during this camp to say, hey, they can get a spot on this roster?
That's a cool question, and I'm glad you highlighted that portion of it, because as I point back to my time with the Rams, the undrafted college free agent process was something that we took a lot of pride in, and we deployed a very similar operation to what we did there. Liam participated in that operation when he was just position coach, and so we know it well. And got to give a lot of credit to our position coach and also our scouting staff who were paired together to sign those two guys after the draft, identify those two guys as the highest priority of the position, because we didn't draft anybody at the position group. And obviously at the time, that was something that in the recruitment efforts was intriguing to both of those guys. And they saw a path to potentially find a spot. Obviously that's been earned. And in addition, right, you talk about the basketball team or the wide receiver group being different genres. Sometimes it's pretty cool to look at how a position's constructed in that at the defensive end position, we have two guys that were top 10 picks. We didn't draft anybody. We end up signing a few guys as undrafted college free agents, two of which end up making the 53-man roster as rookies. And then you got two veteran presence in Emmanuel Agba and Wayne Smoot, who we signed after the draft. So it's a makeup of a room that is coming from all different forms of acquisition, and it's pretty cool to see that take shape and people earn their ops and earn their place, because I think as you guys followed us throughout the preseason, it became abundantly clear that those two guys were making a dent in real life performances, and that was the case in our practice settings, and both showing up not only on the phase of defense but also special teams, right? And to find players at that position who can contribute on special teams isn't always easy. And so they're made of the right stuff. They committed themselves to the process, accepted the coaching, and it's panned out. And really excited for both those guys, excited for that room and really the outlook there, and really happy with how it unfolded, pointing back to our coaches and scouts working in tandem to really get those deals done.
Roughly about half this roster is new, wasn't on the team last year. Is that about the kind of roster turnover you were expecting and you kind of have to have when you're taking over, you know what I mean, that someone else's players, I guess?
That's a cool question. I think it wasn't something that you intentionally set out on saying, hey, we're going to turn over this percentage or this number of the roster. It was an organic approach, and I think when you have high demands for players and expectations and standards, it can become easier to sift through who makes the most sense moving forward and who makes the most sense for being here. Certainly excited about the group that we got in the moment, but can't say that it was with any intent to get to a certain number or percentage of roster turnover.
Taylor Branshaw placed on IR, not able to return. I was under the impression that you were really counting on him this year. So this setback, and it's basically a redshirt year, what came to that decision?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. He had a non-contact injury on his foot that ultimately we put him in a boot with the hope that it wouldn't result in surgery. Checked after the boot came off, and it was clear that we were gonna have to go in. And so he ended up having the surgery. Still had optimism that there was a chance towards the back half of the year that he would be able to return and do a designation for return. Unfortunately, it ended up being that it was going to be too close to the buzzer, so to speak, and it would have been some version of trying to rush him back. Looking at the long game, it makes the most sense to make sure his recovery timeline isn't rushed and we can go about it the right way for him. And yeah, it's disappointing because he is somebody that we certainly had a very vivid vision for, and he was progressing at an extremely high rate. But nonetheless, we got a good group that was ready to bring it to life on the grass and play together, play in tandem, and looking forward to seeing that here against the Carolina Panthers.
What are the chances that Travis isn't healthy enough to play week one?
That's not the case. He's on the grass today and rolling full speed.
Speaking of Travis, you guys have said at the beginning of the process that you don't really know what it's going to look like and you'll let it shape itself. Has that taken shape to the point where you're satisfactory that it's kind of what you assumed it would be?
Yeah, I'd like to think so, and also there's a competitive advantage to not knowing what side of ball he's going to be deployed on fully. What if that's half, if that's a mixture, all those sorts of things can vary from one week to the next, and I think the fact that exists is certainly a hand that we'll keep close.
It seems like there was a clear effort when building the offensive line, guys who can play multiple positions. How'd that factor into some of the decisions you guys made getting to the 53 on those guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think just like I pointed to wide receiver, the defensive end group, as I just work through, hey, what does it look like at each of these position groups and how they're constructed? The thing that jumps out across the offensive line is the versatility, obviously, with the fact that you got guys who can swing from left to right, guard to tackle, guard to center. It's a great group, and nobody's pigeonholed to a singular spot. with that in mind. And so that obviously gives you the luxury on game day to feel like you're not pigeonholed and that you're not going to be tight. And so the fact that we ended up addressing that position group so heavily throughout the offseason gave us a lot of confidence, a lot of competition, and that obviously led to a lot of growth. And we're really jacked about the progression that we saw from a number of the guys returning, a number of the guys that we added, and then obviously we were able to make some moves and leverage that depth through some of the recent trades.
What encouraged you about Trevor Lawrence's camp and his preseason play?
Yeah, absolutely jacked at the progression that we saw from the off-season program to now where we're at through 3 preseason games and on the horizon of the regular season, because obviously going through so many different schemes throughout the early portion of his career, finding stability, finding confidence in understanding the intent of one play to the next, the operation, takes some time. And so Trevor was doing a phenomenal job operationally throughout the course of the off-season program and really being consistent in doing what was explicitly asked. Throughout the course of training camp, he began to test everything and began to push the limits, not just to do what was asked, but go beyond that. And that was the exciting thing that you began to see sort of take shape and taking riskier throws and actually threading the needle in a way that was jaw-dropping, right? And so that was the exciting progression from, let's call it the off-season program, to now where we are at the end of training camp.
You guys veteran depth throughout every step of the offseason so far. It seems like in a lot of different positions. What is the value in having so many veterans that have experience throughout the depth of the roster?
Gosh, I wish I knew maybe what the averages were across the league, like where we would maybe fall. I don't know that off the top of my head. It probably depends on the position. I bet some positions we would stack towards the younger end, some positions we stack towards the older end, so it's probably a fair mix. But nonetheless, it's hard to deny the helpfulness of veteran presence, especially when trying to do some version of a regime change, right? And make it so that now we got a couple folks that can be relied on outside just the coaching staff to sort of tilt the scales of how we'd like to operate and things of that nature. So it definitely plays a big part. It has in our decision-making process, and certainly like that about guys who are coming from experience in winning programs, right? And be able to tap into the idea that it's not always perfect in order to get a win, but there's certainly a mindset attached to those types of individuals, especially when you go through adverse moments as well and being able to come out on the right side.
After going through camp, and I guess the one preseason game he played, have you adjusted expectations for Travis in terms of, I don't know, play time on either side, starting on either side? Has anything changed in your mind about what you think you're going to get out of him?
Yeah, there hadn't been any shift on that front. We expect him to be who we know him to be, and that's somebody who impacts both sides of the football, and can't wait to see that on Sundays and one Monday night.
Can we go back to the Saunders trade? How'd that all come together? I mean, right after the game,
Yeah.
did you go into that week knowing he was a guy you wanted to look at, or did you see him during the game and say, huh?
They actually had lost a backup center in the week earlier, and had reached out knowing that we had some depth as to whether or not there was something that could be done. And so through that, started looking at some of the options that they would be considering, and Colin came up. And so obviously then in the lead up to the deal, we had the luxury of thinking through that at depth and then seeing him live in our game setting before finally executing that once we returned to Jacksonville. But yeah, that was about a week's time when it first got brought up to when it was actually executed.
Hey, when you watch this team play in a preseason game, it's your stamp on this roster now. How cool is it?
That's certainly a neat thing, but at the end of the day, I think from my vantage point, it's time to win some football games, and that's really where my focus has fallen, and that's where the fulfillment will actually come.
Follow up on that, what's it like watching practice with Tony?
Oh, it's an absolute blast. There's very few things that aren't an absolute blast when working with both me and Tony. We have certainly developed a more intimate, deeper relationship through these last 6 months. Certainly one that I know that will bring with it a lot of fulfillment like I just talked about, and hopefully with it also some successful results.
James, are you where you thought you would be when this process started? When you got to the point yesterday, did you feel like, okay, this is what we set out to do to land here, even though it's fluid and it could change day to day?
Yeah, you know, I think, look, good teams can be built throughout the course of an offseason, right? I think the great teams continue to evolve throughout the course of the season. So to say whether or not we're at the spot where I thought we'd be, I can't point to it right now. What I can say is we won't stop. And stagnation is never going to be something that you see from us. So I look forward to still what lies in front of us and know the job's not even close to done.
Evaluation of the running back room, I feel like it's probably gonna be the basketball analogy as well, but in terms of maybe where you've seen some surprises during the preseason, off-season program of any of those four guys.
Yeah, I think pretty juiced up about the fact that we have 4 running backs who we feel very confident in. Obviously, as you think about what Liam deployed in Tampa Bay, it was a committee approach, and we look forward to bringing that to life here in Jacksonville, and making sure that everybody gets the ops that they deserve in a way that contributes to a successful outcome for us. But each of those guys has a role right here and now, and that'll continue to shape itself over the course of the season. And obviously, knowing we're going to run the ball, you know, the idea of attrition isn't a stretch. The thing shows itself, and the fact that we have 4 guys that we feel confident in, trust in, is a really good thing. So excited about where it's at, excited to see where it goes.
From a numbers standpoint, did having Travis maybe change the way you might view the roster? You know, you're able to have 5 receivers, 6 DBs, 6 corners. How did you sort of factor in Travis?
Yeah, that it goes a long way. It obviously, it's interesting. In 53, it's probably less impactful in comparison to the 48, 47 on game day, because now you got an extra active, right? Essentially, somebody who's going both ways. So it's a weapon in that regard. It's actually a math changer, right? It literally is a math changer when it comes to the active game day count. So that's where I would probably apply that as being a really cool dynamic.
How do you
guys
look
have
at-
Time for like 2 or 3 more.
You guys have tasked Liam with fixing Trevor, figuring out how to use a guy on both sides of the ball, something that hasn't been done in the league regularly for a while, win games, all at the same time with learning how to be a head coach. How has he handled all of that so far? And that's a pretty big ask, right?
Well, when there's an opportunity, we bowl him. He don't flinch either, you know. So no, he's jacked about that up, and I won't speak for him. But look, we're not going to just do it some cookie cutter approach. We're looking to gain an edge, and I think we'll try and apply that in every way that we operate. Obviously, some of the dynamics that you just surfaced, they're real, but at the same time, they can provide us with a real edge, and we look forward to trying to bring that to life.
At this point, how do you view the rookie class? You got to see them through training camp. Looks like outside of Ransaw, most of them will have a chance to contribute this season.
That's right. No, extremely excited. Obviously, with the rookie class, it's always an interesting part here in the early portion of the season to see how they're going to be involved on the grass. And I think the fact that we got guys who are built for the right stuff, obviously feeling out for the first time, they've made their dent, and they've all earned roles that are going to be meaningful to us over the course of the season. And obviously, I think that allowed us to move on from some of the guys that have been here for some years. And to those who many are saying goodbye to right now, you know, we thank them for all the energy that they put into getting us to this point, because their presence here was felt, but really excited about the future explicitly when thinking about the rookie class in particular.
Expectations for Armstead moving inside, would you feel more comfortable?
Yeah, excited about that being the case. Excited for him to be back on the grass. Obviously, through the first portion of training camp, he wasn't out on the grass all the time, and was still doing some rehab. And now the fact that he actually is inserted back there really provided a real presence to us over the course of the last handful of practices that he was able to participate in. And he's feeling fresh. He's feeling great. So looking forward to being in an authentic football environment with him come the regular season.
When you look at the turnover of the defensive line, interior defensive line over the last month or so, are you comfortable with, just how much change has kind of happened there heading into week one?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a group that if you're gonna point to veterans, that's certainly got the bulk of them. Mason going into year 2 being the exception, but that's a group that we're certainly jacked to see perform, and the fact that we went heavy at defensive end and lighter at interior defensive line, the fact that we have defensive end body types that actually can reduce inside is a part of that equation. So we would sort of group those two together as an entire defensive front. But yeah, certainly happy with the way that's taken shape.
Last one.